Welcome to the 50th episode recording of the Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got we got more than 6 members. We've got like 25 members. But we have questions we'll be answering through the whole evening. We have people watching us submitting questions, so we'll ask them to step up to the microphone and ask their questions. Those of you wanting to submit a question, you can, and we love audience questions, submit them through the group chat, and I'll try and keep track of that through the evening, see what we can do with getting as many questions in as we can. And then it's up for grabs for whoever's open and on the panel that would like to respond to the question. I'll probably be a little more quieter tonight because I'm kind of running a bunch of stuff in the background, but I'll jump in where I can. Okay, here's the cool part. We have some participation prizes for those that want to submit questions and ask questions. And I'm going to keep that a secret until we get some audience-generated questions. So let's find out from the regular squad who's here.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Steph. Glad to see everyone tonight. This will be fun.
Hey, Eric Perry here. Love a live show. Let's go.
Gina Martin, and I'm super excited to be with you all.
Hey, everyone. Jen Cook, and I, too. Good to see y'all.
Hi, Elliott Ingersoll. Equally nice to see everyone, hear everyone. I guess we're just a 2 sensorial experience for the most part, but yeah, that's good.
Well, it's great we have other people in the room. We have Mitch, we've got Peter, we've got 1847, rest of the phone number I can't say. AB, Alex, Avery Gardner, Don, as we like to call him, Fillmore, Gary, Grant, Hannah Jensius. Is she showing herself? No, she's not showing herself yet. And then Jeannie, Jessi's here, Metarochi, Mitch is here, of course, and Mykka. And the names just keep flipping on me. So I'm probably missing folks, Samantha, Skylar, Zenep, and of course, always here, iPhone. So those are some of the participants in our participant room. I'm going to start with a question from Gina. What's your favorite podcast? Obviously, other than Circular Firing Squad.
Yeah, favorite podcast. Check this one out if you haven't. The Faculty of Horror out of Toronto, Canada. Andrea Subasati, executive editor of Rue Morgue magazine, and Alex West, author of several books, including the 90s teen horror cycle and a book about the new French extremity. They're not only brilliant, but they have chemistry, humor, and everything a person would want in a podcast.
Elliott, are you reading something? I feel like you had that way too prepared for just getting the question.
No, when I'm fanatical about things, my brain just goes over them again and again and again and again. And sometimes I get to pull them out.
Perfect.
I'm going to go with Medical Mysteries. Have you all listened to this? I don't know who produced it. I don't know who came up with it. Sorry, Elliott, you've totally outdone the entire room on your answer. But it's kind of like these historic medical murders from like the 1800s, early 1900s of these doctors and nurses who were, killing people out in their barns in the 1800s, and they've discovered them now. And I got to tell you, I used to listen to it while I was out walking in the evenings, and it started creeping me out to where I thought people were following me, but still a favorite podcast.
I'll go with Pod Save America. I listen to it. It comes out twice a week. It's political folks who used to work in the Obama administration talking about the current events as they come out each week. Very humorous, very in-depth. That's sort of my drive around when I know I've got a longer trip to take. I also Mac Break Weekly. Sometimes I watch that live, and also the Nozilla Cast, which is Allison Sheridan talking about tech. Long-standing podcast.
So I was thinking, and I had 2 because it depends on the time of year. Around horror movie time, I really get into this one. It's called Horror Movie Club, but they look at horror movies from past and not so much past. And I like the way that they break them down, and it's really kind of fun. But I also, for like all the general entertainment stuff, Smartless is always a good podcast for enjoyment. And you have hosts Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett, and then they have like this very laid back but funny and interesting interview with somebody usually that I would want to hear from.
Yeah, I like the true crime. That's really where I'm settled right now. I like Crime Junkie. Someone Knows Something. Case File is a good one. So I'll run through those and see what sounds interesting or what kind of mood I'm in. Those of you who've listened quite a bit should know that I'm big on audiobooks. So podcasts are my in-betweens while I'm looking for a new series or a new something to listen to. So I let them stack up and then pick my favorites.
These are like great answers for a question that I was not prepared to answer. I don't listen to podcasts, which I know is kind of a taboo and something that I probably shouldn't admit on a live podcast. Yes. Thank you, Elliott. So yeah, I don't listen to them and I probably should, but I don't. So thank you for the great recommendations. Horror, medical mysteries, horror movie club, all of these things. Great. I won't sleep tonight. It's fine.
I'm looking for another question. Mitch, do you have one?
Sure. I've been thinking a lot about this sort of recently. I'm a master's student in a counseling program, and I've been thinking along the lines of, how can counseling students better assist their counseling programs so that their programs improve and continue to produce high quality therapists?
Oh, I can roll with this one. Sorry, Elliott, did I jump over you? In any case, I think it's a great question. I don't know why I'm apologizing to Elliott. I should just speak. Feedback. We need feedback. And we talk about this a lot. And I think, soliciting feedback, it can be really difficult, making students comfortable enough to give that really critical feedback that we need, talking about what it is that you need in terms of your development. And I think the most valuable feedback comes later. Those postgraduate surveys that get done, and really contacting and reaching out to your former students who are now clinicians and saying, okay, what did you find that was missing from that part of your training? What did you need? What could we have brought into the program to make you more prepared or feel more prepared? So I think leveraging things like that help programs, take a critical look at what those missing pieces might be. And, just keeping in mind that the landscape has shifted so dramatically, in the last 5-10 years, even, through the pandemic, that those needs are still being recognized. And academia is sometimes woefully slow at adaptation when it comes to meeting these needs. So being responsive to those postgraduate surveys that are a CACREP requirement, particularly for CACREP programs, can be really helpful.
We've been having this debate in our group. What's the best way to screen potential candidates? I'm just thinking, as Mitch asked the question, I'm like, I'm on the side where there are some faculty who think interviews would be good. I've not seen any evidence that you can do anything screening in an interview. But if there were going to be interviews, I'd much rather have senior students do them rather than faculty. That would be my idea.
I like what you were saying, Eric, about feedback. But I'd also say that one of the things that I think I treasure as a faculty member is when students of all levels are engaged, when they actually, we've talked about this on the show before about how much reading do the students do. It's like, if you're actually wanting to, be a part of things and be, teacher's pet, do the reading and encourage your colleagues to do the reading and to engage with what they're doing. Because I think that that's one of the biggest things that we struggle with is kind of having that consistent engagement and having that investment. And sometimes I think it feels like that the engagement is dropping off as our years progress as educators. I don't think that that's unilaterally true, but sometimes it feels that way. So anytime I've had student leaders who have really encouraged their peer colleagues to engage in the process, to not be afraid of self-awareness, to not be, shutting down when there's difficult conversations, and that really comes from the peer group, as far as I'm concerned, because I can stand in front of the class and do my dog and pony show and be as charming and funny as possible. But at the end of the day, the power really comes from the group. It comes from each other, just like it does in group counseling. So I always encourage students who are leaders amongst their peers to encourage those behaviors and to continue to bring them forth to where you all take it to the next level. And every time you go up to the next level, we go up to the next level with you. So that's my 2 cents. I think that more needs to come from the students because we're going to respond positively to that. We're giving you a good product, I hope, every single time. And we're going to continue to give more when the students give more.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone has said so far. And Elliott, we do interviews for our new students, which I think is helpful in giving them an idea of what's to come in the program and what to expect and who you're going to be around and that kind of thing. But it is really hard to gauge engagement, like you're talking about, Jen, through those interviews. So I don't know, finding that balance is going to be important. But additionally, like Eric said at the end, giving us your honest feedback. And then from there, I think my biggest thing that I want to let students know in master's programs is to talk about the profession with other people, talk about your program and talk about experiences that you had and whatnot, because it's counseling is a profession that not a lot of people know really well who aren't in the field. And it's sometimes nice to pull back that curtain and be like, this is what we actually do. And this is how it actually goes. So I think being honest about the profession and talking about it, talking about what you do, what you love about it, all that stuff is really important.
What's a tap back?
What's a tap back?
So Elliott, I was typing it out to you and to everybody. I was going to reply. It's that little feature. So like on Apple instruments, it's like that little feature where you can just put a thumbs up or a heart to somebody's message and you can respond like that. And in Zoom in the chat box, you couldn't do that. And now I see this little feature. So we're just liking people's titles, which is very cool. I enjoy that.
Let me jump in and suggest for those of you following the chat, what we do during the show is if we hear somebody say some interesting piece of dialogue, we'll save it. And at the end of the show, we vote on what we would like as a show title for the show. So when you see these little clips of what somebody's just said come up, I'm copying them over and saving them in a pool. So always hear iPhone. Looks like I'll be editing that too. I don't know why I'm apologizing to Elliott. These are all potential things that were said and all potential show titles that'll come out from that. I'm going to go to one of Elliott's questions.
Oh, wait a second. Mitch should have he should have a chance.
Oh, yeah. Mitch, what do you got?
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate everyone's discussion there. I think, especially with the feedback, I know that students in our program get blue course evals at the end of the semester. Those are sometimes a little less personal because they come sort of directly from the university. I think there's a lot of things that my peer group has been thinking about. We used to have a lot more stuff like pre-COVID on campus before I got there, like peer mentorship programs. I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially as programs are sort of being built back up in a way to come up with creative solutions like that. So yeah, appreciate everyone's input there. That was nice.
I've got a question that's coming from P. Martin, but I'm going to see if they're willing to come on camera and ask the question. P. Martin, can you join us?
Camera, probably not, but I can tell you the question.
Good, fine, that's cool.
My question is, what is the last game each of you has played? Video game, board game, or any sort of game?
House of the Dead. My son and I play that. Yeah, right. I mean, we used to have a bowling alley up the road, and it had the really good House of the Dead. And then it finally broke. And so he found a version that we can play on his gaming computer. So yeah, shooting zombies, that's always good fun.
I like it. I just downloaded today. I haven't played it yet, but I'm excited to play it. Is Jedi Survivor, so the new Star Wars kind of platformer game that came out. But we play a lot of everything. We played Battleship the other night. I don't know if there's any Battleship fans out there, but it gets really competitive in my house. We do the whole tournament, double elimination, right? Like it gets serious. But it was just my son and I the other night, and I think it was the first time I ever lost. So I had to sulk for a little while. I'm still recovering, but it was a good time.
I've got two on this. I'm trying to find the name of the second one, but I'll go with the first one. Taco Cat Cheese Pizza. I don't know if you've...
Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza.
Thank you. Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. I had to look it up, and Amazon apparently has the title wrong on it. Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. Yeah. It is a card game made for people 5 years old to 100 years old. And it's basically dealing out cards that have different images on it. And whatever you're dealing, you keep repeating over as it goes around the group. Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza. And when the card comes up that matches the word that someone just said, you have to slap the pile before anybody else or the last person has to take the pile. Now, there's all sorts of other cards in there like narwhals and groundhogs and other cards that get thrown in that you have to do little body, like with a narwhal, you have to put your hands over your head like you've got a narwhal horn or whatever before anybody else, or you get the piles. It's something I was drafted into and just happens to be the last game I played.
I was feeling nostalgic a few weeks ago and I needed to get out of my Fortnite kind of thing because that's just all I would play. It was just good for 20 minutes just to do something different. And it's fun, whatever. But the last game I played was Final Fantasy VIII. I'll get Final Fantasy VII in a bit, but I also I remember really liking Final Fantasy VIII, and I just needed something new and something where I didn't have to play in real time. And it's really kind of fun again. I was surprised. I thought I was going to be bored, but I think I might be enjoying it on a different level.
I'm going for another playthrough, Steph. You convinced me. Going back.
So I don't play video games, and one of the Don in the room was reminding me that earlier today, the last game that I played was pretend I'm a stink bug and you want to get it out of the house, but then it gets sad. So then you have to comfort it. So that's like the last make-believe game. And Millie is a very adamant player of the make-believe games. I think earlier I was the sitting monster. So yes, we have played lots of those games in the past 24 hours. But the last real official game that I played is something called The Game. And it's all about like numbers and putting the cards in a numerical order and making that work. It's like a team game. So super fun.
I'm looking for more questions to see if we have one that's generated or any that are generated from the audience. If not, I'll go to another Gina question, which is, what's your favorite bug and why?
Well, obviously the stink bug has a very affectionate title in our home. That's Millie's favorite bug. I don't know what mine would be. Probably, I don't know. I have not thought these questions through, Marty. We'll leave that there.
Gina, it's okay because the only bugs that came to mind for me are Nora's favorites, which are butterflies, butterfly, and ladybugs. She has a ladybug shirt, and she gets very upset when it is no longer time to wear her ladybug shirt, and she likes to find a ladybug.
Yeah, mine are linked to my kids too. I do not like bugs. I would eat them if I had to. They are a good source of protein in many cases, but it would not be my first choice. But there's a large beetle about this big that comes out the ground. I don't know. It's something like every 5 or 7 years. And we had the neighborhood kids in the backyard, and one of these things came out of the ground and it flew at me, and I smacked it, and it splatted against the side of the garage. And I was like, dang, this is like baseball practice with large bugs. That's kind of interesting. But they're huge, and they have a lot of eggs. I mean, there's a whole thing. I don't even know what they're called because I'm not an entomologist, but not a bug fan. I like to keep my relationship with nature professional. You stay out there. I'm in my nice, warm little 3rd floor here.
I don't have favorite bugs. I pretty much dislike all of them. It's really strange. I used to go camping a lot. And when I was camping, they didn't bother me as much as when I'm in my house and they're in my house. It's sort of like if I'm in your environment, then okay, that's cool. You be what you're going to be the best bug you can be. But when you're in my house, then we got a problem. And I lived in South Carolina with my family where we had palmetto bugs, those huge bugs. And they were, I think, breeding in our attic because occasionally we would get them down in our house. And those drove me kind of nuts. Not my favorite bug. Like I said, I don't have a favorite bug, but probably the one that I'm most acquainted with.
I had to go with butterfly, just because it's the bug that's gotten me into the most trouble. For whatever reason, for like 3 years straight, my daughter's teachers, they kept taking over this honors program she was in. And every year they bring home this butterfly unit that they're doing. And I have to hear the word chrysalis about 1,000 times in my house. And she's frustrated because it's the same thing. So we're going to parent-teacher conferences. And by the 3rd year, I thought it was something I should mention. My spouse did not. So it's kind of become the running joke here that it's the butterfly thing. It was my confrontation with her teacher and asking why it was necessary for her development to learn about chrysalis for the 3rd year in a row. So yeah, probably butterfly.
I'm going to go ahead and cheat a little bit and go with 2. There is this YouTuber that I like watching. His name is Coyote Peterson, and he runs a YouTube channel called Brave Wilderness. And something that he does is he intentionally gets stung by all manner of bug. And so the 2 that he got stung with were the bullet ant and the tarantula moth, which sounds just obscenely frightening. And he'll talk about what it's like going through these stings as he's being stung. And it's very interesting to see like what his reaction is, so it'll sting him on his arm and he'll be like, okay, well, now I'm feeling this, now I'm thinking this, now, I'm feeling these somatic sensations. So that has, despite my disdain for bugs in general, it's always interesting to see him get stung by all variety of crazy bugs.
Will people do anything to avoid going into the working world? I'm just wondering, because I'm thinking like employment, I think I'd rather be at McDonald's than getting stung by bugs for money. Like, I just can't wrap my head around this.
It sounds though, we could use that person in counseling. It's like a Gestalt approach to bug stings.
Or they could be a client, Elliott. I mean, we have options here.
Say, Jen, I'm more like.
I mean, I feel like that's like some, NSSI going on there.
All right. I got another question. This comes from my daughter and the president of the International Jen Cook Fan Club, Hannah Jensius Flower. Hannah, go ahead and shoot us a question.
So true. So true. We're a large club and a diverse club. But, honestly, not great at organization because no events as of yet. But if you want to join, just let me know. So my question, I am not a counselor, but I am a teacher. And I love this podcast for many reasons, because I get to hear all about your lives and I get to hear all about what you love about teaching. And I get to hear this sort of different perspective on it. And so I am curious what you do at the end of a workday to unwind and leave the workday at work.
Well, it's easy for me. I drive for about 50 minutes which I despise. I hate driving. When my kids take away my car keys, I'm like, we're going to have a party. I'm all ready for it. You can take them any day now, But I drive home, and then I usually watch some film. It's something, Carl and I'll tune in something, and we'll probably eat carbs. And there may be a glass of wine here and there.
Well, before Gina steals my answer, I'm going to say I typically read. That is one of my ways of de-stressing. I do not have a commute currently. I've been work from home for the past 2 years. So there is no commuting involved unless we're talking from this room to that one, which is about, 10 whole feet away, where I settle into the recliner chair, usually with my evening cup of coffee and whatever trashy novel I'm reading at the time.
Yeah, Jen, you totally did take my answer. So you all know that I love reading. So reading is definitely one of my big wind down activities. Although for me, it doesn't necessarily always end with me winding down. I will usually end up staying awake until 2 a.m, finishing the book that I commenced at the beginning of the evening. But that would be probably one of my favorite ways of unwinding, maybe on a weekend where I have time to sit down and read a full novel or Russian literature or whatever. And so that's one of my favorite things. Additionally, I also drive, Elliott. So I listen to my Sirius XM radio. That is a luxury that is a necessity for me, for my commute. That's my favorite way to unwind as I'm heading home from class. I usually replay the events, the things that we did, the activities, the things that may have gone well, the things that didn't go so well. And then when I get home, I have some Oreos and sweets, cake pops. Yes.
Okay. So who amongst you actually stopped working at the end of the day? Jen. And you don't you don't eat refined sugar. Okay. So we're already into the CFS bingo game. So, yeah, I kind of finish work and come home and try to clean up pieces for the rest of the day or for tomorrow. Generally, I wind up getting distracted by, here's another CFS bingo, an old movie that's on TCM.
I generally start with a really heavy sigh or a deep breath, something of that nature. That's usually the call to the end of my day. I am a semi-professional Uber driver for my children. So depending on what's going on with them, 4 to 5 to 7 days a week, I'm catering to whatever their needs are. Sometimes my spouse and I will make eye contact briefly before bedtime as we're moving children about. When that's all done, I have some friends that I game with in the evenings that, is always a good time. I have people read to me. I'm done reading at the end of the day, so I listen to audiobooks. And generally, I'm not as good at putting things away sometimes, so I will revisit the computer or work or kind of plan for the next day. But I found even just a short 20, 30 minutes of that can make me feel better about the next day and less stressed, just to kind of set myself up and know what's going on. So that's kind of my routine.
Hannah, how do you answer that question?
Well, I, like the lucky ones of you, have a drive home. So I listen to podcasts. I listen to Circular Firing Squad when it comes out. Although usually I actually listen to it on my way to work because I feel like it gets me in this sort of, thinking space and makes me think about teaching a lot. So it's not a great wind down podcast for me. And then, I, earlier was folding laundry and couldn't jump on the podcast thing. But that is one of the ways that I annoy people the most, I think, is by recommending podcasts that they didn't ask about. So I listen to a lot of different things, but Maintenance Phase and lots of Real Housewives podcast, Reality Gaze. Lately, I've been listening to I've Had It, which I highly recommend. Yeah.
Just for the record, Hannah, you have a lovely speaking voice. It's right in that perfect range of Midwestern. I think your dad said you were a vocalist. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm a singer and a voice teacher.
Yeah, you know how to use your voice. I just wanted to appreciate that.
Thanks.
I'm going to ask Mykka, who posed a question somewhere in the chat a ways ago, if you can turn your mic on at least and ask the question.
Sure. I was wondering how you would describe your sense of fashion.
What sense of fashion? Comfortable? Comfortable for me, but uncomfortable for everybody around me, probably. Colorblind is another way that I would describe my sense of fashion. And sometimes my sense of fashion is unopened fly without knowing it.
Well, I resonate with some of that, Marty. Obviously, I'm a highly intense person. I'm very anxious. I sweat a lot. So I have to wear black on top. Whatever, But a few years ago, I realized I had gotten into a rut with trousers. So I started wearing kilts, which I had one from my Uncle Jack. And they're really comfortable. And Marty, this might help you. I realized you can put the color on the bottom. So I have the black on the top, and I can mix up the tartans. There's all kinds of tartans for Scot-Irish mongrels like myself. I've not bought any that should offend any clan and get me in a fight, But yeah, kilts. Oh, I love those. I don't think there's much fashion sense in it. It's just about comfort for me and playing with colors, which I haven't done for 60 years. You can get in a rut with trousers, though. So let me just say that.
So shout out to Get Dressed with Gabby. I have a sister who runs a fashion blog on Instagram, and she is really all about fashion. She's always overdressed for every occasion, and she is always dressed to the nines. And I'm sure she is hearing this. She's in the room somewhere. You all have met her. She was my doppelganger on the show a little while back. And I am the other sister that is not the fashionista. I don't know if there's a word for that. My typical go-to, and my students, I have a couple students in the room too, will note that I usually only wear black. So tonight we have a little bit of an exception because I've got a little bit of blue on. So I'm really branching out for you all this evening. And usually it's just all black all the time. And it is definitely all about color, or not lack of color, obviously. Wow.
I've actually, sent pictures of outfits to people, and does this match? Does this make sense? Is this going to make, I have to plan ahead and plan with somebody else because I don't have an eye for it at all. I have to add, like seconding Eric, when I was in the chair role, I had two brilliant administrative assistants, and I would just go out and I would say, well, hey, does any of this match? I had 2 sport coats, 3 ties, and 2 pair of pants. And they would be like, yeah, it's good enough. And I'd be like,
so I got to say, I've been mullet dressing for the last 2 years because I've been teaching online, and I have taken a new position starting in the fall where I am going back to work in person and suddenly have to dress my entire body as opposed to only half of it. So I'm trying to remember what how I dressed. I mean, I have the dresses hanging in the closet, so I do have some sense of it. But I'm not even sure how I would name my style. I mean, I like to be professional, but I'm not a person who's going to spend a ton of money. It's just not going to happen. Goodwill is my friend when it comes to blazers. And I'm going to tell you, there was this woman in Milwaukee who had all of these tailored blazers and jackets that she donated to Goodwill. Her initials were like embroidered into them, and she was exactly my size. And I have I'm going to say 4, I don't know who she is, but I have 4 of her tailored jackets, and I got them for $6. So I think I like to look nice, but I sometimes fear that I look like I'm dressing from a garage sale, because most of the time I am. And I'm having this fear that, garage sale meets, 2 years of mullet dressing. And I'm not sure what that's going to line up as when I go back into the real world come fall.
I got to say, I love the garage sale line. I did have a colleague once who asked me, why do you dress like a flood victim? We were close. They could ask me that.
I just don't think that's fair to you. I mean, I don't know. I've never seen, maybe I've seen you at a conference at some point. I don't even know, but oh, well.
Oh, wait till you see.
I'm so interested to know which colleague that was, but maybe a story for a different time. One of the things that I used to do with my sister when we were much younger, when we were just getting old enough to drive, is we would go around to the mall, and I'd ask, hey, I don't have any fashion sense. Could you basically dress me for high school? And she did such a great job of that 15, 20 years later, we're still doing the same thing, just driving out, to go thrifting or to go shopping. I'd like to think that I've inherited a bit of her fashion sense, but that's always just something that has made me think about whenever I think I have no fashion, that I can always rely on my sister for her input.
Love it, Mitch. And I will say, after 31 years of being around my sister and her fashion sense, I still don't think I have inherited any of it. We both went to a shower the other day together, and I walked in and her face was like, why are you wearing that? And I was like, what? This was a nice outfit. So there's hope, but I'm just putting that out there.
You're still cute, Gina. I mean, you might not be dressed to the nines, but you're adorable. So just play that.
Okay. Other questions? Can I ask an Elliott question? I don't know the answer to this one. It took James Cameron 14 years to create Avatar 2. What other films from 15 to 20 years ago could use a sequel?
I don't know if it's 15 or 20 years ago. I would pay big money to see Jodie Foster reclaim her role as Clarice Starling, and do another one of that Thomas Harris novels with 32. Anthony Hopkins as what's his name? Hannibal Lecter.
I think that's 32 years ago. I want to say 1990.
Wee bit more than that. But hey, what the hell? Let's shoot for the stars.
Time flies.
After the fences.
It's just crazy. I'm flabbergasted.
My answer to the question is everything that was done 15 to 20 years ago has already been redone. Most of what we see are sequels to sequels to sequels to sequels, then a prequel, and then a post-sequel sequel. So I'm having a really hard time. I have to reach back to the 70s, or have to reach back to where you really kind of had auteur kind of directors doing really interesting things.
I personally don't like sequels. Like I feel like they always ruin it. It's sort of like the movie version of books. I put them off my list now. It ruins it, because I'm like, well, why didn't you deal with X, or why isn't this character in it? Like, as much as, and this was a series, and as much as I loved Gilmore Girls, I'm like, you can't have a 20-year Gilmore Girl reunion without Suki St. James, and she was there for like 22 seconds. Like, no. So I always find myself disappointed. Sorry, Elliott, but I'm like, I don't want any more sequels. Like, no. Maybe we could play prequel, and that would make sense why the main characters that you absolutely love aren't there. But yeah, no more sequels for me.
Although, AB in the chat said gross point blank. Oh my God, John Cusack. I'd be all over that one. Nice suggestion.
We have some questions that have popped up. Did I cut somebody off?
No, because I was just going to reiterate what you were saying, because about like Maverick, there's your Top Gun sequel. And, they did the Point Break sequel, or not sequel, or even just reboot. And I think The Craft reboot. So, yeah, what's old is new. I
agree with you there. We had some questions that came up. I know we've got one from Lucy Perry. I'm trying to see if Lucy will get on the podcast with us. Also, Grant asked a question, so he's got one in the wings. And then we just had a question from who did we just have a question from? Oh, from Jessi. Jessi was on here for a while. Jessi, can you come back on and ask your question? And then we'll see if Grant and Lucy want to come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dr. J. I was wondering, for everybody, if you had the power to change one thing in our profession, what would it be and why?
Well, this is going to sound bitchy, but okay, whatever. I would love for our professional organizations to actually focus on things that had more import or that represented more counselors. I find it, everyone's left ACA. The mental health counselors left, the school counselors left, and who's left? And last show, I had a question. What is the best source of labor statistics for counselors? And none of us really knew, but ACA should be freaking doing that. What are we paying them all the money for? Boy, that bugs me. Sorry, something that just chaps me, but thanks for the question.
I would have to say promotion and tenure. I think the system is screwed up. I think it constrains creativity in a lot of ways. And it is a system that is there as a check and balance on people who are already working. Maybe 2 or 3% of the folks are not working up to speed, but everybody else is contributing. but we have this system that's set up to make sure those 2 or 3 fall under some process of evaluation that makes all of us work to meet the system, not necessarily to our best efforts.
I think for me, thinking about the counseling profession, I think I'd want to see us be elevated to the same level as other helping professions. It's incredibly disheartening and irritating, frustrating, scary, anger producing. Let's put in a few more adjectives there, that our graduates are not entering jobs at the same pay rate as, say, social workers, or even in some cases, bachelor's level psychology graduates. And because we're not elevated to the same level, because we are not as old as they are. So, it's like ageism based within the profession. So I would like to see us on equal footing and have our folks paid, what they are worth and what their value is in terms of being counseling professionals.
Yeah, I agree with Jen completely. And the second part of that for me would also be, so I just recently moved to Wisconsin, and in moving to Wisconsin, I had to get licensed in Wisconsin. And now I've been in the profession for a little while now, and I've had my license for a little bit in another state, albeit. And it took me 8 months to get licensed here. 8. And that is a really long time. And that included several trips to the Capitol to check on my license application, to make sure that everything was going okay. Lots and countless hours on the phone listening to the elevator music, waiting. Fun fact, they never answered the phone ever in the entire 8 months that I waited for that license. I think that would be the number one thing that I would change, would be licensure. Just the time to license would be pivotal for counselors.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to academia a little bit. I would really love to see just more research, right? I think specifically counseling research. I teach research and assessment a lot, right? And love to advocate for what the profession has to offer in terms of research. And I think particularly at the master's level, we don't push this as a priority for clinicians. We're like, well, you need to know the research, how to look stuff up, support what you're doing. But as far as you doing research, doc students and profs will do that. We don't push it. We don't talk about the fact that as clinicians, you are it should be a huge part of this body of research and contributing to it. And I know the practical challenges to that, right? Like agency work doesn't lend itself to being able to be a researcher, in the great majority of cases. But I think as a profession and as counselor educators, we have to get behind the field being predominant in research. And I think that's what gives us more of this credibility that we need within the mental health professions. And we saw an upswing, and then I feel like it just died off, and I need it to come back.
I got to add, just to piggyback on Eric, and K-Crep, boy, there's another, that's the only bug I really like, the bug up my rear about K-Crep. Why don't they do research? They change the standards, and it's just like, what? What are they, the wizard that we got to go petition for a heart or a brain? I'm like, they don't do any research. They just seem to whimsically change standards, and it really bugs me.
They do some, Elliott, because and they don't always publish it, of course, like publish it as research. It ends up being like a white paper or something like that. But for example, when they sent out the surveys that were the open-ended questions about changes that were made during the pandemic of, sort of the reasonable accommodations people put into place, I ran a research team who analyzed parts of those data. So they do some, but then whether or not they reach the hands of us who actually care about what people were doing and what they say, that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? So I'm just mentioning that because I was part of a research team of several counselor educators and several doctoral students and new professionals who analyzed those data back in, I guess it would have been 21.
Good to know. Thank you for sharing that, Jen. That's the first I've heard of it. And I've been in the field 30 years. And you know how many white papers I've written? You see those books behind me? Those books, they don't even come close to the number of white papers I've written. Oh, it's a big stack like this. No one will publish them. If they can't go through peer review, why the hell should we trust them? Sorry, went off on a negative tangent. I think Mitch has something to say.
Yeah, I'm going to take the academia route as well. I'm not a professor, but I think one of the things that I would certainly change about where I go to school is to give professors free parking. And this is a much broader topic about I think that colleges sometimes are so obsessed with nickel and diming and making money that they're not looking at long-term, why do people want to stay at the university? Why do students want to come to the university? Why do, how can you get, professors who are really invested and students who are really invested? And I think when, I remember looking at like my online sheet just for an individual class, there's an e-learning fee, a $35 e-learning fee for what exactly? It doesn't cost any, it doesn't, we're not reserving a classroom or anything, but I think when people feel that they're getting a good value, especially your employees, when your employees feel like they're getting a good value, then that gets them to be more invested long-term, and I think is better for the university financially long-term as well.
All right. Nikki for Luci.
Yep, we're ready.
Question? Okay.
Hi. I have a question. What is everybody's most embarrassing thing that happened while teaching or at work?
I would love to kick this one off because mine just happened. So a couple weeks ago, and I actually texted some of the squad about this. A couple weeks ago, I was on campus and I was about to walk into my intro to marriage and family class. And we had a little bit of a storm in Whitewater, Wisconsin. And I was sitting on my 6th floor office looking out the window thinking, wow, this is so great. It's so beautiful. What a lovely, lovely little storm that I'm going to get to watch from up high. It's great. So as I'm cleaning up my office and getting ready to head down to class, suddenly the power goes out in all of the university. And I had to walk down to class in the dark. And I sat down and taught a class by flashlight on my phone. And it was the most embarrassing moment for me because I had to stop after about like an hour. And I was like, you know what? This isn't worth it. I can't see any of you. And we were my husband was joking. The Don in the room was joking that they all probably left, snuck out of the room as I'm sitting up there talking. So that would be mine.
That's a tough one for me. I mean, I have a tendency to block out embarrassing moments, but as it happens, I was talking about sleep apnea in class last week, and I told this story in class, so it's of a public nature. I'm diagnosed with sleep apnea, been diagnosed for years with it and have been treating it, and it's fine. The treatment's fine. But I put a film on, short 15-minute film. It was the Gloria tapes, okay, for those of you who know the Gloria tapes. And I sat in the back of the room, so I don't think people could actually see me, but I fell asleep in my own class while I was teaching it. Now, trump that if you can.
It's an interesting question because one of the things in my own life I'm interested in is transparency. So in one sense, I don't know if anything's really embarrassing anymore. It's all grist for the mill. And I think if I can just be okay with my own fallibility, my students maybe are like, well, maybe it's okay if I'm fallible too, because we all are. But I'll say, having long COVID, I have these, if I don't get enough sleep, and I used to sleep 4 to 7 hours a night, and now it's like 12, which is like an ungodly amount of time for me. But if I don't do it, I'm in like a waking dream. And about a year ago, I went into a class, and I had a psychopharmacology. I had my lecture on anxiolytics ready to go. I went in, started giving the lecture, and one of the students raised their hand and said, "Hey, Dr. This is personality theory." I was like, "Right, you are. Gonna switch up right now." But yeah, I was like really bummed because I thought I was like able to function in that waking dream, and I was not. But I pulled it together. And
well, I have one. I think it's pretty close to Elliott's. I painstakingly created these really, I was impressed by the slides that I had for lecture. I used this whole superhero theme. They're very colorful, very bright, lots of information, and it's for career. So I was working on talking about career theorists. The first week went great. The second week, I saw some like weird faces on one of my slides, and I kind of wrote it off. And the third week, somebody finally told me, they said, Dr. Perry, is it true that all of the career theorists said that career is an expression of personality? Because it's the quote you have on all of your slides for all of the theorists that we've studied so far. Clearly, in copying and pasting the really cool format that I had, the quote kind of hung out there. And I didn't notice. I was so focused on getting everything else in. So, at random points then later in the class, it became, someone would interrupt and say, Dr. Perry, I have a question. Is it true that career is an expression of personality via Dr. Holland? Just at random points during the class. And then, it was a nice icebreaker for when things got really dull, as career can do sometimes. So that's mine.
Well, I was trying to think. I think Elliott said not much embarrasses me anymore. And I maybe that's just because I do ridiculous things all the time, and students have become used to it. But the very first time I ever got up to lecture in a counseling class, I was still in my master's program. I was toward the end. And I'd been asked to TA with the department chair in my master's program. And I was like, I was super, super nervous. I'd never taught in a classroom setting. My undergraduate is not in teaching, like none of that. And so she had invited me to go ahead and, introduce myself and tell the class what I was going to be doing and, what types of roles I'd be taking on. And I got up and I got super nervous. And I don't even know what it is that I said that prompted me to say this. But I said, I guess I'm having a blonde moment. And I say this and the whole class sort of laughs. And I don't know if anybody knows Marsha Wiggins, but she this was back in the days when she was blonde, and she was like, excuse me. And she points to her head, and I about fell over dead because at the time I had my hair dyed dark. And I was like, I swear to God, y'all, I'm blonde under here. And I have never, and she was like, I'm just playing with you, basically. She didn't say that because she's way too proper for that. But like, I just about shriveled, and I was like, oh my God, I am never going to get anywhere in this profession. I'm probably never going to teach again. I'm sitting here, I'm TAing with the department chair. This was my one shot, and I've insulted her on the very first day. And so that was probably one of my most embarrassing moments because I felt like I just broke everything. And of course I didn't. Duh, right? Like, not a big deal. Everyone does that. But later on, she was like, some people could perceive that as a microaggression. I was like, I got it. Don't say that kind of thing.
I don't know. Nikki, Luci, do you want to respond to that?
I do want to say this. Luci is young. She's 12, and we enjoy listening to the shows. And you know what she just said to me? That she loves watching you guys, like seeing you right now on Zoom. And she said, I love watching these people who love what they do talk about it. And for someone who is young, and listen, she's her father's child, okay? She's like, I'm going to go to Ivy League, all this stuff. And giving her the opportunity to watch you guys is so special. So thank you for that.
Thanks for your comment. And it's been a labor of love over these 50 episodes. We'll talk about that. But it's great to have you here, and great to have your question. Grant, are you ready? I know what his question is. His question is, what's your favorite Beatle and not the Bug? I got to go with John. I probably would have said, George, but definitely not Ringo and not Paul.
George.
I'm going to go. I got to go with Ringo. I feel like I'm one of those people, not terribly smart or talented, but good things happen to me. And I kind of resonate that with Ringo, and he's done well with it. He's not been pompous. He's just been himself. And I'm like, no, there's a role model for you, Elliott. You pay attention.
Yeah. And Grant wanted to know why. My why would be the more I learned about George Harrison by seeing documentaries and stuff like that, not in the moment of experiencing George Harrison, but seeing his independent work and the stuff that he did, the greater appreciation I had for Harrison. And John was just prophetic in a lot of the stuff that he talked about. So
here's one of those really weird questions about the artist and the art. When I look at like how, like, I don't know, John treated his first wife, and you know, it's just like I'm not doing presentism, but I'm like, it kind of soured me on him. So that those things do impinge upon me. And maybe Ringo did the same thing, and I'm just not aware of it. That's entirely possible. I hope not.
I love the Beatles. I grew up listening to the Beatles, and I think they are probably one of my favorites. And I love In My Life by the Beatles, obviously. And I think that that's why I love John the most. But I do agree with you, Elliott.
But it's like Bill Maher said, you know, about Michael Jackson, the music didn't rape anybody. And I have to honor that point as well. You know, it's just like, we're all fallible, and artists, maybe they get more degrees of freedom in societies such as ours. Who am I to judge? But yeah, interesting conundrum.
It can be hard to separate the art from the artist at times. So I'm going to say Pete Best. Does that count? Basically, because he went on to have a fabulous life and doesn't seem bitter, and is feeling like he dodged a bullet in a sense, not blowing up with the Beatles. And I don't know how long it took him to get to that point. I'm sure it was not instant, but I don't know him and I never did. So maybe it was. Maybe he was just that zen with everything in his life. But I just wanted to mix it up, I suppose.
Well, I was going to say George. And I think just it has nothing to do with the music or the band. I think at one point there's a clip of an interview where they ask him, you know, is Ringo the best drummer in the world? And he says he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles. And then I loved it. It cracked me up. So he's has that humor, and there's clips. I think I want to say it's George. It's had just like witty one-liners that I don't know. I loved about him.
I just solicited the group to see if there are any more questions coming up. Other than that, I can go back to.
I think P. Martin had another question about.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm Philip Martin, related to Gina, so that's who I am. My question was, let me go find it. So what is the moment you knew you wanted to go into the field you're in? Like, was it in college, before? When did you know this is where you wanted to be?
That's a good question. You know, we kind of touched on this in a previous show, and I shared, I was like 6, 7 years old, and my parents went to this pharmacy that sold school supplies, and they had notebooks, spiral notebooks. The name was Varsity, and they had a big tower on the front, probably like the one at Texas. Don't want to get into bad memories, but yeah. And I just looked at that notebook and I thought, I want to work at university. Absolutely no reason why. And then through the years, different people who nudged me in that direction, it lit up for me. And a lot of the counselor educators out there are thinking, oh God, couldn't you have gone into physics or something? Maybe I could have, but I'm not science minded, you know? So, but the path was very much, I knew what I wanted to study. And at the time I was trying to bridge theology, psychology, and in an applied sense. So counseling made sense for me in that. But it was really, that was a flashbulb moment. Like I said, I'm not quick smart. So I remember that, and heaven knows what that's about, but that was my story.
I think that last time we talked a little bit about this, I talked about becoming a counselor in the moment that I knew that one. And I think it's a little bit different when I think about wanting to become a professor. So I worked at a really prestigious Ivy-esque school back before I even became a counselor. And I worked as like an accountant, administrative, whatever. I did a lot of statistics. It was a whole thing. And in that role, what I loved the most about it was the interactions that I would have with the people. which is kind of what led me to wanting to become a counselor and all that. But the specific moment that I'm remembering in why I wanted to become a professor was there was this one. So all the professors were really characters at this school. A couple of them had those big prizes that we've talked about on here before, and I can never remember which ones they're called, but the big ones. And they were just odd. I mean, there's no better way to put it. They were just strange. And I just felt such a connection to them. And there was this one day that one of the professors walked in to my office to ask me about a ledger or making dinner reservations or something that was just kind of off the wall. And I remember being like, okay, sure. And then he turned around and he walked straight into the wall instead of walking out the door. And he just kind of made this noise like, and then like walked out the door. And I remember thinking in that moment, I think this is what I need to do. I think that this career is for me.
Mine, I'm thinking, there's a story about how I got interested in counseling, but this question seems to be about current profession, which was to go into academics. I've been doing 15, 16 years of clinical work. I started after my undergraduate degree, which was unheard of now, was doing clinical work in a variety of settings. And sort of the last place that I stopped out for a while, worked in radio for a couple of years, just radio, although I was doing radio and clinical work prior to that, and tried to re-entered the field in South Carolina working with kids, and got so frustrated by the state system and the rules associated with the state system that in my arrogance, I kind of said to myself, I'm going to get my PhD and then I'm going to come back and fire all these folks. And that never happened, and had the opportunity to kind of fall in love with teaching at that point. I didn't know what the pecking order was in firing people, but working in a system that was really screwed up, I thought, maybe if I come back and I taught people going into the system essentially or eventually, the system would change. So the tipping point for me was when I drove up to Columbia, South Carolina, went to a meeting all day where the different state agencies on this one kid were trying to decide who was going to pay for treatment, not what treatment was necessary, but who was going to pay for treatment. And then came back and talked to my boss about it, and just was so frustrated with the system. It's like, I've got to do something else.
Yeah, I think in terms for me, I've been going to counseling ever since I was 13. And since that time, I was fortunate enough to have an exceptional counselor and, someone who was a mentor, someone that I could look up to, that really convinced me very early, very quickly about how powerful counseling can be. I think that sometimes I can, or we all can, maybe feel a bit overwhelmed by all the, injustices that are going on in the world, and the big problems that are almost impossible for us to address. And, sometimes I wonder if I can just help, if I can just help people one at a time throughout my life as a counselor, maybe that's enough. So that's kind of the moment for me, was probably when I was about 13. So it's been quite a bit.
I'll just start by saying and admitting I'm wholeheartedly selfish, right? So I think in both situations, when it came to counseling, really drew me in was that that feeling you get when you're helpful to someone. It's addictive to a degree, right? To make it somewhere with someone and be a part of that change, and having been a part of that outside of that. Outside of a counseling space, it's really sounded appealing. And then I love the feeling I get from teaching in the same way, right? It's the same thing. It's different, but it's that same kind of satisfaction of being a part of that development, that change, that movement towards something, and generally towards something really meaningful. And I think that's what kept drawing me in. And I remember one of the faculty that I had in my graduate program was moving on to another institution. the following year that had a doc program and said, hey, you should do this. You could definitely do it. It would be great. It would be, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. Right. I think I can make this happen. Like, it's possible, even though like it's not, as a first generation student, it's not, there's always that doubt, right, that you have to walk through. But I think the thing that kept me motivated was that feeling of being that person who is there for that change and a part of that change in somebody else's life, whether it be through learning or through counseling. It's the same thing that keeps me motivated.
We have a question from Avery, Logan, and Carter.
Hello. So my question is, what is a topic that you know a lot about that you think everyone also should know a lot about?
I'll start with politics. Now, it's a particular type of liberal politics, but I'm surprised how politically unaware many people are. And so I think people should be informed about their own government and what people are attempting to do in their government or not doing in their government.
All right. So I think just communication skills, just basic people skills. There's just a lot out there sometimes where it's like, do not understand where they're coming from. Or, and I'm not talking about clients. I'm just talking about walking around, doing your errands, how to ask for something from somebody at a store. I don't know. It just seems like everyday communication skills. Yes, I've taken classes that incorporate them a lot, but at the same time, I think everybody should know this information. I don't think it's particular necessarily. I think it's good for human beings.
In terms of something that I know, Avery, you asked is a topic that everyone should know more about. Something that I've been thinking, like specific for counselors recently, is the idea of knowing more about the ins and outs of sports gambling. We just got gambling legalized in Ohio, and I imagine that counselors are going to be seeing a lot more people coming in to talk about problem gambling in Ohio and other states that are legalizing it. Something that is just it's just crazy the way that the system works on all these online sites like DraftKings and, BetMGM or whatnot. The average bettor loses about 10 to 20% every time that they make a bet. The amount of financial trouble that someone can get into, if you're a student or if you're someone who's looking to go see a counselor for this, like I imagine that we're going to have a lot of people in the state of Ohio and other states who are legalizing coming into counseling office and talking about their financial issues with this type of stuff.
I think history. For me, it's history and theology. Theology includes history. But it was like, go back to Old Testament Torah stories about, the people are like, oh, we want a king. We want a king. And God tells Saul, yeah, it's a bad idea. They're just going to rip you off. They're going to fuck you over. Don't get a king. And the people are like, no, we want a king. I was like, all right, well, And then I was the first LGBTQ conference I went to. It was in the 90s. And it was, I thought, very well done. And, it was one of the first ones I'd ever been to. It was like, oh, here's people. It's all great. But then, at the end of the conference, they had like a bit of a kind of an infighting on stage about different factions in the people who had organized the conference. And I was like, okay, that's real. That's politics. But you know what it reminded me of? Irish history. Read Tim Pat Coogan, History of the IRA, or The Troubles, the history of the UK. And it's just like the Irish are just a beautiful example because they're like, yeah, let's go fight. And then they're like, oh, fuck you. I'm going to fight on my terms. No, I'm going to fight on my. And then they break into factions, and there's all these different factions. James Joyce puts it beautifully through his novels, about how we're all so, there's so much importance about being on the same page. And yet we have to honor our individuality. And how does one go about that? And like, reading history kind of helps me like, oh yeah, when a group that I think everyone's on the same page, when they all break down into little factions, I'm like, oh, well, that's natural. Okay. But then how do we bring those back together? And I think studying history might help us do that.
In total violation of the spirit of the question, I feel like people need to know a little bit about a lot more. I think I've been on this thing lately. So I bought a boat, and boat is fine. It is now, but I take it out once and it starts leaking gas, and I immediately panic. We've had this conversation on the show. Power tools and I are not a thing, right? I don't have that skill set. But I was frustrated. All the boats are going out now. I can't find a mechanic to work on it. So I'm looking to fix it myself. I'm going to watch YouTube videos. I'm going to find the tools. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to breathe. And I fixed it. I'm super proud of myself, right? Because it's not something that's within my skill set. And I think just having these experiences more, like stepping out of your comfort zone, learning a little bit about, I'm on a boat, Jen. I'm on a boat. I almost said it. Right?
Well, Steph and I are singing it. I don't know if you saw our lips move.
I saw it. But I guess this is the master of none talking, right? Like, I don't feel like I have anything so solid I can lecture somebody else on other than what I've studied here and talk about here. But I do think there's value in having more experiences that don't fit who you are and where you are.
Marty needs to sing now.
Let's go, Marty.
Not going to sing, but am going to. I think we're through with questions. Am I right? Oh, I got one last question. Fifth for the squad, and then we'll do a final shot. Last question is 50th episode. What do you have to say about it?
I'll say this. At one point, someone asked a question, when was it you really felt part of the counseling profession? And I had an answer related to Judy Moranti's mentoring of me. But honestly, it was this. Quite frankly, y'all are great. And I never felt connected until we started doing these podcasts. And I'm very grateful and appreciative. Thank you.
It's just a load of fun. I mean, I look forward to every time that it's the whole squad is together. When we have like the factions of the squad, it's a fun time. But when we're all back together, I don't know if the last podcast is out yet, but the last recording, the 49th show was, I mean, we just had a badass time. I have to say, like, I mean, we were just laughing the entire time. I mean, because we all hadn't been together in such a long time. And so I think that this is a consistent, and we started during COVID, which was a very different time for all of us. And of all the times to start something new, when we were all spread so thin, it brought a collegiality that I think was really important to all of us. And to watch lots of different transitions, lots of different things happen over the course of these 50 shows, and to have you all come along with us. It's a bizarre thing. I don't know. Like I'm the one person who doesn't introduce themselves as and co-host of, because I don't have a podcast. This is it. I'm with y'all. And that's the end of the story. So yeah, it's a cool experience. And I love being with you all and spending this time and being connected in this really special way, because some of the folks on the show I didn't know until we started doing the podcast. And now it feels like we've always known each other. So yeah. And finally, I've met everyone in real life, which is pretty badass as well. So yeah.
You haven't seen me in my kilt yet, though. Wait till you see that.
Yeah, bring it. I'm mostly Irish and English. So like, I think that kilts should be like normal menswear, because like summers, the skirts and the dresses, like it's freeing. It's freeing. You all should get to join.
Yeah, I want to echo what everyone has said already. I think that it is definitely a highlight. It has been something that has made me feel part of the field, something that has made me feel welcomed to the field. Like Jen mentioned, we've seen some transitions in here, and one of those was when I graduated with my PhD and took my first real academic job that wasn't adjuncting. And it's just been amazing to have the support from this group of people. And it's been incredible, even though we're not all in the same place, even though we went through a pandemic, even though we've gone through all these transitions. I feel like it's been the one constant that has brought joy. my life and to the profession is like my connection to it. So it's just been really a beautiful thing. And Hannah, your comment in the chat really strikes a chord. Marty, you have been just fabulous to bring this group of people together and to facilitate this. It is so appreciated and so needed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. 50 feels in some ways like it's like we've had a lot more, and in some ways that we haven't done that many. Like it hasn't been that long, but it really has. And it's funny because I'll talk to people about the things that we talk about here. And, you know, I enjoy having the time and the opportunity, not just to talk to like-minded people, but to get the different voices that we have on the show, to have those conversations, and, you know, just have that opportunity. I think a big part of my coping over the pandemic was being able to come here and to talk and to feel connected. So, you know, I'm very thankful for that. And I'm excited and hope we do 50 more.
So, and there I go with my pause. See, it's so much in my head now. So anyway, I learned that after 50 shows, but this has been, I mean, I don't have too much of a connection to the academic world and to people and like colleagues or would-be colleagues at this point right now, because I'm in that weird dissertation phase while I'm working at a counseling practice. So I have more of the clinical stuff going on, and it's nice to be able to talk about some of the stuff from a different angle, but really it's the connection that everyone else has been talking about. And it's meeting people that, again, I wouldn't be talking to these people every other week. They would have no reason whatsoever to be associating with me. And it's just really nice to be able to do that. And I'm also learning a lot from them as far as what they're getting in academia, but also just to share life. And I think that's what it's turning into more too, is that we're all sharing like the life stuff more and more with each show. And even if we're talking about work or something work related, it feels more personal, but in a really nice way. And the fact that we've been doing this consistently and everyone's participated consistently, I think also says a lot about what the show means to all of us individually and how it's been bringing us all together.
Well, great. I want to share, and I put a note in the chat room with my email address, that if you provided a question and asked the question, you get a special gift. I was looking for something through Vistaprint that I could get now. It's going to take probably another 3 weeks before I get them, and then I'll send them out to you. But so I was looking and found, we've done coffee mugs in the past. I think all of us have their Circular Firing Squad coffee mugs. And if I purchase any more coffee mugs, Aileen will kill me because we have a shelf full of different Oddcast coffee mugs that I came up with. So in my brilliance, in the moment, you're getting luggage tags. Now, the unfortunate part of it, because I know we all travel, luggage tags are something we could all use. They're going to say Circular Firing Squad on it, which means you might get full body cavity searched for something like that on your luggage. So I will send out luggage tags when they come into the squad to people who provided questions and some of our new friends online. And let me know if TSA pulls you aside, because I'd just be curious to find out. Yeah, my job with this whole production is to have friends like this who are willing to take some time on Sunday night and share their thoughts, gather questions together, and support each other in a way. And my second job is to radio check every time Elliott drops an F-bomb. We have a final shot question, and then we're out of here. So final shot question, Gina. Everybody can answer this, by the way.
Yes. So I just have so many questions tonight. I love that. So my final shot question for this evening is Monopoly or life?
Monopoly is of the devil, life.
Monopoly, because I don't have to have a baby.
I don't know if there's some finality in this, but it's just life, because that game actually ends.
that was playing into my thought process too. However, one of these days I will finish a game of Monopoly. So Monopoly, just because I have to keep trying until I finish.
I'm gonna go with Monopoly as well. I love picking out the pieces. I just remember competing with the family over who gets what. Just really, that game's got a special place in my heart as a kid for some reason.
I'm gonna go with Monopoly because I've never played Life. Never have had the opportunity. I had friends who had it growing up. Never played Life. So Monopoly it is. And that's it for this week's episode of the Firing Squad. I want to thank the Firing Squad, the regular crew of Jen, Eric, Steph, Gina, and Elliott. Mitch joins us and my daughter joins us as sort of a step in for us as we need folks in the future. Other people that are still involved or still on are AB, Avery, Logan, Carter, Gary, Grant.
Alex is in with the Carter crowd too.
And then Jenny, Jessi, Mykka, Nikki, and Luci, Peter, E. Martin, Skylar, and my daughter who was in here, Hannah Gencius Flower. So thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you for enjoying the podcast on our 50th episode. You can look for some of these characters on their podcasts on thepodtalk.net. You can find out more about them at circularfiringsquad.net. Our theme music is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.